We're on Whiskey, Sticks, and Politics, and we got a very, very exciting guest here with us, Aminah Thompson, running for Superior Court Clerk for us right here in Durham, North Carolina. And we know our main thing is just making sure that we got an audience that's informed and know who is running for office, is going to be representing us and ultimately servicing the community. And we got somebody that's going to be here seeking your vote. So we want to sit down and ask them a couple questions and see what we got going on. So first of all, as I noticed, you were pointing out that you went to school with Jason Williams.
I did, yes. I am a big Duke fan. Jason Williams was in my freshman class. We had a number of freshman basketball players that year on the team.
Beautiful.
Loved it.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So again, just thank you so much for being here with us today. Tell us a little bit about your story. Where are you from, and how did we get you here today, including being in school with Jason Williams?
And a number of other, basketball.
Oh, absolutely.
Players. Yeah, Carlos Boozer, Mike Dunley.
Big team that year, right?
Big team. As you said, my name is Aminah Thompson. I am your current Clerk of Superior Court for Durham County. I like to mention that I was the first Black and first woman elected to that office in Durham.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Whiskey, Sticks, and Politics. I know the first for you here. Remember that.
And so I really came to that through my parents.
Okay.
Both of my parents are educators. And my dad really was a civil rights activist.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so he was always about public service. From Greenville, South Carolina, he always talked about being, the mayor of Greenville and the governor of South Carolina. So that was, kind of his aspirations. And he was a guy who was DEI before DEI was a thing.
Oh, wow.
So at the University of Massachusetts, his office was Office of Third World Affairs. That's what they called it at the time, back in the 80s. And so that really is how I got into, kind of my love for public service. So as you mentioned, I graduated from Duke with my undergrad, went to law school at Chapel Hill.
Oh.
So I got a little bit of both blues.
We diversified the education too, right?
For sure. And then I practiced law for a short period of time and then was appointed as a magistrate in Durham. So I served as a magistrate judge in Durham for 14 years.
So as a magistrate judge in Durham, what exactly comes under your purview in that role?
So I had the honor and unique privilege of doing all kind of facets of what a magistrate does. So on the criminal side, it is initial appearances, setting conditions of release, involuntary commitments. At that time, we were doing domestic violence protective orders, ex parte. I spent the most of my time as a magistrate on the civil side, so small claims court.
Okay.
Durham's, Judge Mathis.
Right. Okay.
And landlord-tenant cases. That's also a huge part of it.
A lot of stuff probably comes up through that circuit as well, I'm sure.
A lot.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. And it really is, magistrates are really the kind of the gatekeeper of the justice system. Most times people come before them unrepresented. It's kind of like, your first interaction with the system. When you get arrested, you go before a magistrate. If you have a small claims case, you take it before a magistrate. Marriages, we perform marriages. So kind of everyday things on the front lines.
I like it. So to save money, I'll share a story with my audience. I actually got married in front of the magistrate in Raleigh. Okay. All right. My wife and I, we, starting out, just wanted to save money. We actually did a destination wedding, but to save money, we got married here in the States first, and then just kind of went to Jamaica for the celebration. You know what I mean? So I've had my experience, but on the good side with a magistrate. But this is a different situation a different role that you're wearing right now.
Yes.
Clerk of court, right? Yes. I know you said the magistrate is sort of the gatekeeper. How would you describe the clerk of court? What important role do they play in our society?
I would also consider the clerk maybe not a gatekeeper, but a front door.
The front door.
Certainly the front
intro for sure. Okay.
When you come to the courthouse, most of the time you're going to be interacting with the clerk. I have a staff of 70 people, and they are the filing clerks, the courtroom clerks. We are the comptroller, so they're the cashier, the bookkeeper. Most of the people that you see kind of helping public facing throughout the courthouse, that is the deputy and assistant clerks.
Deputy and assistant clerks. Okay. All right. All right. Now, so when we're relaxing and living our day-to-day lives, right? We know that there's a lot of things that goes on behind the scenes that may not be so savory about that role, about all of these service roles, right? If there was a area of opportunity as far as the way things are working right now, what do you think is the area of opportunity for the way things stand for your role right now?
Okay. Well, I'll start by saying also, in addition to the other things that I've mentioned, the administrative part of what the clerk does, also the record keeper,
Right.
also a judge.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm a judge of probate and estates as well, have
Oh.
original jurisdiction over those cases. So I really do have a lot of judicial responsibility that really impacts the lives of our citizens. So, one thing I would really say just is I really try to have a customer focused kind of approach, but also just making sure that I'm taking the time to take every case on its own and have a really people-centered approach. Not only understanding the law, but understanding how it applies and how it affects people's everyday lives.
Well, it's good. It's good. Customer service approach. A lot of times when we deal with the law, it doesn't feel very customer service. I gotta say, but then again, it doesn't really seem like it's that type of situation. What does good customer service look like in the legal system?
Well, for me, it's really about access.
Access.
Yes, we are a keeper of the records, so providing access to those records and providing information. A lot of times people come to the courthouse and they don't really know where to go or what, you don't know what you don't know. So they might not know what they're looking for or who they're looking for. So we really try to be service focused in that regard and making sure that we're providing good information for people. Taking ownership of a task,
Yes, ma'am.
trying to help someone through the end, until they get an answer for their question, as opposed to just kind of pushing them off to the next person. So that's really, what it looks like for us. We also try to provide additional resources like a website and a newsletter and different customer or forward-facing materials that help people to navigate a complicated system.
I appreciate you breaking that down for us right now. When you think about a lot of the things that you picked up, because you said you put in 14 years as a magistrate. I heard that right.
Yes.
So it's 14 years being a magistrate. What sort of skills are going to translate over to superior, or translate it over rather, because you're the current
the current
clerk.
Yeah.
What sort of skills help set you up for success in your role today?
I think that really being compassionate.
Yes, ma'am.
And realizing that accountability and compassion are not opposite, right? I can follow the law and strictly follow the law, but also recognize how it's affecting people's lives and recognize that I can still be patient and compassionate and, respectful of everybody who comes in front of me.
Yes,
and that's really the main thing I learned as a magistrate. A lot of times people just really want to tell their story. They want to be heard. They want somebody to give them some feedback on, what they're thinking and what they're going through. And so I really found that if I could just do that and make sure I listen, a lot of times that is the best thing you can do for somebody.
That stands out a lot, because when I'm thinking about how things are set up, you think about the Supreme Court, right? Those positions, they're appointed for life, right? When we think about the judicial system, that kind of comes to my mind, appointment for life, because it keeps judges out of the political process, so to speak. When you think about a clerk position, why is that a position we vote on as opposed to not one that's appointed?
Well, I do think
if that's a fair question. I don't know if that's a fair question.
It's a fair question. It's a fair question. And I think it's because it really is a seat that is for the people,
Awesome.
to implement what the people need. And so it's only fitting that those people are deciding who's going to be in that position to help them and to provide access to justice and to provide, good, sound legal reasoning. I do think that it's appropriate for for my people to make sure that I'm the person that they want to lead in that role.
have some say into that process.
Yeah.
How long are terms, or clerks' terms?
4 years.
So 4-year terms, all right.
4-year terms.
So very similar to the president. Not, this is going to be one of those elections that's not as sexy as the presidential election, but very important, right?
Right.
Your clerk probably has more day-to-day influence over you than the president does, right?
Certainly.
Talk to us a little bit about the importance of knowing about this and people being more involved or more enthusiastic about voting.
So, and you brought up a good point, how the clerk definitely has more, I think, effect and impact on people's everyday lives than, say, your president. And that goes for all of the judicial races, right? Which a lot of people kind of ignore. Some people don't even vote at the end of the ballot. And so that goes for, your DA race, clerk of court race, judges, district and superior court judges, local judge races. And so it's so important, I think, for people to appreciate that those are the people that are going to be, essentially setting the policy for your local community. Those are going to be the people that you're interacting with, who are going to be making decisions that are going to affect your daily life. Of course, the president is doing that as well, but really on a day-to-day local level. So I think it's really important just to talk about voting, right?
Okay.
Talk about the importance, to tell people that it's even time to vote.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll tell somebody, hey, make sure you go out and vote. And they're like, oh, it's an election time?
Oh, no.
Right. And because it's not a presidential election, a lot of people just, it's not on our radar. And so I think it's really important to get out the vote.
No, and so you said something there. You said that you've been engaging with the community when it comes to voting. What's some of the feedback that you've gotten as to why people don't vote at the bottom of the ticket? What are they saying is keeping them, from going all the way down, or whatever reason they might not be involved?
I think some people don't know. They don't know how to assess the judges and, some of the other people at the bottom of the ballot. And so, sometimes people would rather just not make an uninformed choice.
Right.
No choice at all. And so that is what we really have to kind of tackle and ensure that people are, doing their research. And there are a lot of opportunities, I think, forums. There are a lot of political action committees who vet different candidates. And so I think the research, the information is out there. Information is out there.
No, that's very interesting, right? They rather not make a ill-informed decision, so they just leave it blank instead, or not show up to vote at all. With you being, in this race right now, what's some of the, I guess, positive things that we've kind of heard from constituents in the city of Durham when it comes to getting involved in the local elections? Has there been any good news lately? Are you seeing any changes?
Well, I do. Particularly in Durham, I see a lot of good news. I do think that Durham, especially in my arena, I think we have a great bench in Durham.
Right.
We have some really, strong judges, judicial officials in Durham. And I think we have the reputation of being accessible and of being transparent. And so I do hear a lot of that. Of course, people have some negative things to say. That's always going to be the case.
Right.
Overwhelmingly, I hear positive things. And not to toot my own horn, but I hear positive things about the clerk's office. I'm really proud of that. I'm really proud of my deputies and my assistants who really, take care of the public.
Right.
We might not always get it right, but at least I think, it's clear that we're trying to do the best by the people that we're serving.
Right. So when I was doing my research about you, speaking about you coming into your role, I noticed that you unseated a 20-year incumbent.
I did.
Talk to us about that process. This individual, they was holding that seat, locked it down for like 20 years. That means they won 5 elections, right?
Yeah.
Because the office is up every 4 years. What was that like? Talk to us about that process.
It was quite a process. I say that election season was probably one, the hardest I've ever worked in my life. Just to, put myself out there and show people that, some positive change was appropriate at that time.
Right.
So I will not say it was an easy process. I remember going to him because one thing that the clerk does nominates magistrates.
Okay.
So I'm like, he's gonna have to nominate me, if I want my job back if I don't win.
Oh no.
But
A leap of faith for sure, right?
but also as out of respect, I went to him and I said, I'm planning on running for clerk. At that time, I thought he was gonna retire actually.
Okay.
I can't say for sure, but I don't know if my kind of jumping in there changed his mind about retiring. But so I told him I was going to run against him, and he offered me a job, which I declined. And I was like, you know what? If he thinks that I could come and be a good asset to his staff, then maybe this really is the right move for me.
Right.
And so I did it, and I went full force ahead, and didn't look back.
No, that's a very powerful story, right? Being the first Black woman elected to that seat, being able to unseat 20-year incumbent, that says a lot about your work ethic, right? I mean, obviously learning about you going to Duke University, graduate law school at UNC, you definitely stand out, right? As somebody that seemed more than qualified to do this role. Kind of like in our previous conversations, you mentioned your dad and how, he was real big, civil rights person, kind of coming out of Greenville, South Carolina, right?
Correct.
And you said that he was like DEI before DEI was a thing. And I gotta say that doesn't have any relevance here because you're more than qualified, I feel like, for this type of role. Talk to us a little bit about how, we're modernizing things because Durham's growing, right? And being clerk of court has to be effective in some way. What are we doing at that position to kind of account for the growth that we're experiencing right now?
Well, one of the biggest things that we've done is implemented Odyssey. And so that was under my leadership, eCOURTS as we know it.
eCOURTS.
The electronic record keeping system that has now been implemented statewide. But I would really say that—
Thank you for that.
Yes, you are welcome. It was quite a feat, but I do think that it increases the accessibility and the transparency and really streamlines a lot of our processes. So it is a very clerk-heavy system.
Okay.
I will say that it creates a few extra steps for the folks in my office. But, again, we are here to serve.
Right.
And so being able to make it a little bit easier to navigate for other people. And ultimately, sometimes it does make it easier for us, even though we have to do a little bit of extra work on the front end. And so, but that modernization is huge. And also, beyond that, I've definitely tried to streamline other processes, improve internal workflows so we can really have the efficient clerk's office that the citizens deserve and expect.
No, seriously, thank you for that. And doing a little digging into your platform a little further, talk to us about the lead. What is it? Is it legacy, efficiency, accountability, and diversity?
That's right.
Right. So talk to the people about that platform and what does it mean?
Okay, well, that's the platform that I ran on the first time.
Okay.
And I'm still on it now.
Yes, ma'am.
It has, of course, changed a little bit because the things that I was thinking about coming into the position and now that I'm here, but the L is legacy. And so really understanding that a lot of the things that I do as the front door of the justice system touches a lot of people's lives, especially the probate cases, the special proceedings cases like the partitions and the foreclosures, and a lot of the fiduciary appointments that I make, the public administrator, the public guardian, commissioners, including the jury commissioner, really goes to people's legacies, right? Their homes, their properties, generational wealth.
So is this the clerk would step in and make decisions for assets if there's not a will? Is that what you guys do, or you guys decide who's the appropriate beneficiary, work through that sort of thing?
All of that.
Wow.
So deciding who's the appropriate heir beneficiary, that is under the clerk's purview. The clerk is the original jurisdiction over estates. So deciding whether someone can probate this copy of the will or determining, who the heirs are, going through the process, the probate process with somebody, that's the clerk's office. Partition cases, foreclosure cases, name changes, adoptions. These are all cases that the clerk hears. And then the other part that I mentioned, the public administrator and public guardian. So if anybody dies in Durham without someone who is ready, willing, and able to administer their estate, the clerk appoints a public administrator.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay. And I do incompetency and guardianship hearings. So if someone comes to the court and says their loved one can no longer manage their own affairs, they need a guardian appointed. If they have no one who is ready, willing, and able and qualified to be their guardian, then the clerk appoints a guardian.
Gotcha.
And sometimes that would be the appointed public guardian.
That can be a very complicated process. So it's very important that you have a will.
Yes.
Very important that you have a will.
Stress that enough. I cannot stress that enough. And, a lot of times in our community, people, it's like taboo. Or, they think somebody's, coming for your stuff.
Right.
And I don't want to say that's just in our community, but a lot of times there are a lot of taboo.
Yes.
But really, it is for your people, right? It makes it so much easier for the people that you're leaving behind.
Yes.
If you just make preparations.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Make your preparation. No, Dylan, and I appreciate you making that clarification. It's not just our community. I work in finance, and I've had, dealt with individual advisors, and it's a tough conversation approach with anybody, right? And people are hesitant because you're thinking about your will, and you're thinking about death, and it's just not a good thought, but it's very necessary. But I have clients on both sides, all skin tones and colors and creeds, religions. Everybody is afraid of that next step. But that was the legacy part of LEAD, the efficiency, accountability, and diversity. I know that was all part of your first campaign, right? And you said you're still like standing in that now.
Exactly. I'm still, expanding on those things. Of course, the efficiency with eCOURTS and just making sure that we are responsive. The accountability, I think is really centered around transparency and just making sure that we are accessible as well. And then, of course, the diversity that has also kind of morphed into just diligence, right? About everything. Diversity of thought still, but then also making sure we are considering all of the different aspects of what the clerk touches and really making sure that we are not only running an office that is rooted in the law, but also that takes into account the lives that we affect.
Right. No, thank you for that. And, hearing that, bringing us all the way here in 2026, right? You're in the role now. You've done the thing. First Black woman to win this role. The honeymoon phase is over, right? So coming into the campaign and looking at this next cycle, is there some unfinished business that you have that's maybe leading you wanting to continue to run?
Well, certainly, I want to continue, what we have started. There are a few things that I have in mind that I do want to accomplish. And I don't know that they're necessarily directly related to the clerk's role, but certainly to the access, right? I talked about having a daycare or at least available daycare in the courthouse or around the courthouse for people with business before the court. Because we don't think about that, but that's, often a barrier to being able to at least appear timely in court. If you have a childcare issue or, whatever the case may be. So that is something that's been very important to me, as well as a resource center. Wake County has a resource center in their courthouse that helps a lot with, pro se filings. And it's not a center that's designed to give legal advice, but just to give legal help and resources. And, a lot of times just understanding the process makes it so much easier. And so really being able to establish something like that in Durham, I would love to do.
Right. Now, what would you say to the voter who hasn't stepped foot in the courthouse and doesn't think the clerk's race affects them?
Well, that's definitely not true. Most voters are in the jury pool. The clerk You know, one of my assistants is the person who manages the jury pool when they come in and out of the courthouse. You know, we do, like I said, name changes, adoptions, legitimations, a lot of proceedings that you wouldn't think of who does that.
Right.
So, you know, it might be something that you have to deal with. You know,
Get married. We talked about that, right?
we keep the records. And so, you know, you never know when you will need a court record of your own or to access a record of someone else's, right? And so all of these things are under the purview of the clerk. So I think, you know, it's really broad reaching and everybody's life, I think, touches the clerk's office in some way.
Now, how do we make sure the office stays transparent and accessible to everyone, regardless of, you know, income or social status?
Okay. So the other thing I was going to say is that I, you know, make sure to prioritize other ways that it can remain transparent and accessible. And you mentioned the money and kind of the income. So one thing I did in this past year was participate in a ability to pay solution sprint. It was a nationwide project with court officials from all over the nation, as well as several of our court officials. And Justice Forward, talking about ways that we can reduce barriers to access, and particularly financial. And so, you know, just coming up with kind of a standard for filing and appealing as indigent, whether or not people are eligible for a public defender, those types of things. So just participating in any way I can to make sure we reduce those barriers to access.
No, we appreciate that, because a lot of times it seems like if you don't have money, sometimes you end up in jail.
Yeah.
And so how do we bring back the community to be able to trust our legal system? What are some additional things we could be looking at or doing that you think could bring the more trust between the community?
I would say definitely from the clerk's perspective, just the, you know, what we've mentioned, transparency. Information, providing resources, and, you know, letting people understand what the process looks like. I always say that we are moving, you know, from a reactive model to a preventative one. And, you know, by providing the newsletter and the website and different plain language forms, checklists for people to use to kind of walk them through the process. I think that is how we really elevate the trust, because then it's, you know, transparent, understandable, and people are able to avoid long delays. Hearings are more productive. You know, filings are correct the first time. So that frustration is gone. And I think that really is how we improve the trust in the justice system.
I love that. That transparency, that's been a recurring theme with everybody that I've interviewed running for office right now, from district attorney. Even when I've sat down with the sheriff, he used that big word, transparency. Are there other offices that you work with, or any other elections that you're looking out for that's going to help your job make your job easier?
Well, I would say definitely all of the judicial races, right, within the courthouse, because those are the people that I work most closely with. So definitely our district court judge races, our DA race, the sheriff's race as well.
Right.
We work very closely together in the courthouse, just as, you know, during the winter weather, we were talking every day on what courthouse operations are going to look like. And the people who are there now, I've been able to work very well with. And so I think all of those pieces are essential to having a court system that runs fairly and accessibly, and the transparency as well.
No, thank you. I thought it was very interesting when we were at the forum speaking to everyone. Everybody seems to want the best for Durham. That's what I love the most about getting to know or hearing everybody speak. And so I think that's real important to kind of keep Durham focused. What would you have to say to that person that's like, you know, I'm getting down to that part of the ticket where I don't want to vote anymore. This is Aminah Thompson. Why should I put a check mark by her name?
I would say it's so important. You know, it is so important. The first time that I had an interaction with the clerk's office, it was while I was in law school. And I actually worked for Judge Mathis the TV judge. Oh no, I was. He's a real judge. You know, those are real cases. Now, some of those TV shows are not real, but that one is real, and a few of the other ones too. So I was a court researcher. And I would go to the courthouse in Durham County, Orange County, and Wake County and go through the small claims cases and pick the ones out that were, you know, good for the show and send them into the show. And actually, 2 of the cases I sent in were actually filmed on the show.
Oh, wow.
And so I say that to say, even back then, before I even knew I wanted to be a clerk, that is who taught me how to do my job. You know, I was in the clerk's office and in Durham, and the clerk who helped me then is one of my assistants now, right? And showed me, you know, this is what you're looking for on the form. This is how you go through the forms and find what you're looking for. And this is, you know, how you put them back in the right way. And was very diligent about her job, but also about helping me and teaching me. And I was just, a young law student. So that really stood out to me, right? That the clerk was the person who taught me how to do my job. Same as the magistrate. When I was a magistrate, the clerks helped me and guided me because they had been there, you know, much longer than I had. And so I would just say that, you know, it really affects our community.
Right.
Me as a law student or anybody who's coming into the courthouse. And so I think it's important because it, you know, that comes from the top. That comes from the elected clerk to the people who are in the clerk's office.
Yes.
That, you know, that customer focus. And I think it's really important for our community. So I would just encourage people to do their research, right?
Right.
See how wonderful I am. And just know that, you know, I want what is best for Durham, like you said. And I want to provide the absolute best leadership that I can.
You heard it right here first, guys. Somebody that's values driven, that's very, very well prepared, has served as a magistrate for over 14 years, now wants to be Superior Court Clerk. That's a mouthful to say it. Superior Court Clerk. Aminah Thompson here with us here today. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Whiskey, Sticks, and Politics with Rashad Sullivan.